Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Hey, Carm, great. How are you today?
Good. Folks, thanks for joining us today. I have with me Shannon Anderson. She is the co-founder of GritHR. She is also our outsourced HR provider. She acts as our director of HR. And I asked Shannon to jump on with me today because when we're speaking to clients and we are speaking to prospects, we get a lot of questions about remote workers, uh, people in the field working. How does that all work? They're usually questions relating to technology, but that inevitably starts with a question about sort of HR perspectives. And Shannon handles it for us and for a number of other companies. So I thought it'd be good to have her on and talk a little bit about that. Sound good, Shannon?
Sounds wonderful.
All right. So let's start out with, you know, we had COVID, we came out of COVID. Still, a lot of people aren't back in the office. We have that challenge as well. What's the current state? What are some trends that are happening now with remote work?
Yeah, so great question, Gar. I think it's really one of those things that companies are looking at long term because it's become more than a trend. It's become more than that band-aid that we utilized in COVID to protect people. And it's really become a fundamental shift these days of how work is approached. With our advancements in technology and then changing attitudes towards work-life balance, it's really seeing an exponential growth. So it's not really a perk anymore so much as it is a necessity for a lot of organizations to stay competitive and attract talent, but it's also allowing them to expand their reach because they're no longer consisting of an employee pool that's very, very small. They can now open up nationwide and get from a fish from a great big pool of workers.
So that's very interesting. So do you, in your opinion, and across your client set, tell us a little bit about your client set and the number of end users at most of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So our clients are anywhere, I would say our sweet spot of clients is between about 25 employees up to about 100, maybe 150 employees. We definitely have some that are outside those margins, but that's really been our sweet spot. And
And that aligns with ours, right?
absolutely does align with yours.
So across your client set, what percentage are coming back to the office in total?
10% maybe. Most are either fully remote or hybrid.
So would you say there's more hybrid or fully remote?
I would say it's probably about 60% fully remote and 40% hybrid.
Okay. So in your view, and when you're talking to other business leaders, like when you talk to you are on our leadership team and your employees are the HR directors for many other clients, right? When you guys are talking to your clients, um, what's your perception on how productive the remote workers are?
It's actually been a lot more favorable and a lot higher than I think most people would thought it would have been. Um, a lot of studies have gone to show that remote work leads to that increase in productivity. Employees are allowed to create that ideal work environment. For example, maybe they get migraines really badly, and eliminating the overhead fluorescent lights really helps that. Maybe they don't do well in an open cubicle environment because of all of the noise. So they're able to minimize those distractions and really stay focused on delivering results for the organization that they work in. But the key to that is one, managers have to trust their employees. And two, making sure that you have clear communication and clear expectation to maximize that productivity in a remote setting.
That's actually the segue to the next question I wanted to ask, which is what are some best practices that you're finding for remote or hybrid workplaces across your client set?
Absolutely. So it goes really back to that foundation of that clear communication and tools to facilitate collaboration. So, not just email, not just being on the phone, but using a tool like Teams or Slack just to send a quick message that you might normally shout over the cubicles, right? And then also setting those clear expectations and deliverables for remote work. So, internally, one of my expectations for our team, and by the way, our team is 100% remote, is that I'm not micromanaging their time. If I have to micromanage their time, they're in the wrong business. We are not aligned. But what we do need to do is we need to deliver on results. So if you tell a client that, hey, I'll have this offer letter ready for you by noon, it better be in their inbox by 11:58, right? So understanding what those expectations are and then delivering on what you say you're going to do. And that's what we do. And then also another one that's really critical is flexible. And when I say flexible, I'm not saying we're going to let people work from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. just because it's better for them if that's not when the business. It's about accommodating different time zones and personal preferences. So our rule of thumb is you need to be available to work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. within your time zone. And then, if somebody can't get on until 8:30 because they've got to drop the kids off at school, great, because they're going to make that up on the back end and work until 5:30. And then making sure that they have that training and support those remote work tools. So, in the MSP space, it's having things tracked in like IT glue. We use a system called Trainual to document employee training SOPs and that everybody can access. So different ways like that. SharePoint's another great tool for housing the resources that employees are going to need. And then some other nice to haves, which is not usually in everybody's budget, but if you could offer a stipend for like a home office setup or internet expenses, sometimes even just like $100 gift card or stipend, so they can go get a couple of tools that would be nice to have at their desk. We've seen a big trend and shift into virtual team building activities to foster those social relationships and just those relationships in general. And then encouraging that work-life balance, making sure people take their breaks and use their time off appropriately.
Those are great. And you sort of mingled the last question I had in there, but I did want to talk a little bit about stipends because that's something that on the technology side we hear coming up a lot. So folks are looking to hire a technology partner like Teal, but their employees are using personal machines, and they know that they need to be secured and controlled to protect themselves and their clients, right? So what they're doing, a trend I've seen is they're doing a stipend, like you said, which is, I talk about this a lot on sales calls, which is they're providing their employee a $2,000 stipend. I just made that number up, but from that stipend, they're to get a computer, a monitor, maybe a headset or what have you. That equipment is then owned by the employee. So if they ever leave, they keep that that equipment, and then they give them a stipend every year, probably not $2,000. But then when they do that, they tell the employee that, hey, we're going to have to put tools on your machine, your computer, to manage it, to make sure it's protected. Even though it's your machine, when you leave, we'll remove those tools. If you want to put your personal documents on there as well, it's your machine when you leave, so you can do that. But we need to protect it from a cybersecurity standpoint. So I just wanted to add that. And then sort of the last question, but you talked about a lot, in something we're challenged with, and all of our peers are, and all of the clients I talk to, which is, how do you build a culture? How do you keep people included when you're in a hybrid workplace? Ourselves, we have 2 physical offices, one DC Metro, one Minneapolis, Minnesota Metro. And I think we have employees in 16 different states. So we're in a true hybrid scenario. So we're challenged with this as well. So you mentioned some things that are obvious, like Teams and Slack, but what are some other things that you're seeing work across your clients that keeping people engaged and building the culture?
Right, absolutely. So beyond the things like you said, Teams, Slack, etc., and doing those regular check-ins, like I host one-on-ones with my staff every single week. Just, it's their 30 minutes. They can talk about whatever they want. So today, one of us, we spent the first 10 minutes talking about the new puppy that she rescued from the shelter, right? And we have those conversations. And then we got into the business side of it. So just having those regular check-ins can be so meaningful to your employees. Also, making sure you remember to celebrate those milestones and achievements. So whether it's a birthday, as a manager, I have all their birthdays on my calendar, so I get an alert 3 days before. And we actually use a tool called Snappy, which is really great. It's an automated gift tool, and they can go in and I can set a budget. And then instead of them getting a gift card, which trust me, gift cards are great, but there's tax implications with gift cards. This is a area where they can go in, they can pick a gift that they want out of, I think, like 20 or 30 options, and it gets shipped directly to them. There's no tax implications because it's treated as a true gift. And they love it. And we use that for celebrating if somebody gets a new certification that's really big, especially in HR one. Birthdays, anniversaries, things like that are reasons that we use that tool. Also, it's really cool. We've done this over at Teals. We've created different virtual spaces for those informal conversations or those water cooler chats where we play a game called Dares Day, where somebody posts a prompt. Like, we've done silly prompts, like take a picture of I dare you to take a picture of the inside of your refrigerator and show us what it looks like, or tell us who your favorite animated character is, just to start building those common threads between people. We've also done things like implementing a social committee, and it's comprised of people from each of those in-person offices plus virtual team members to really work to bridge that gap and make sure the needs of all three sets of employees are being met, and doing other virtual activities like trivia, virtual happy hours. And there's some actually really cool companies out there now that are totally focused on virtual activities such as Jeopardy. They call it Coworker Feud. There's one that's a murder mystery. We actually recently did an not an in-person, but we did a virtual team wine tasting where the company sent us all wines to taste, and a sommelier came on and educated us all about the wines, and it was super fun. So there's a lot of ways now that we can do these things virtually, but at the end of the day, it really comes by managers leading by example and fostering that culture of transparency and inclusivity.
That's great, Shannon. While you were saying that, I actually wrote 3 things down that we do here that either you have recommended or you've certainly been involved with. The first one is a social committee, which I don't need to say too much more about it. As a culture comes from the top, of course, but we empower the people on the social committee to set a cultural tone inside of our company. The other thing is we use a tool. We mentioned a lot of tools, but we use Crewwho for giving awards and badges, so people can give badges to each other. And the last thing that you actually did bring to us is our 4x4. So before COVID, when we all worked in the office, we did an annual review. And now what we do is what we call, I think, I don't know, pretty sure you coined the name, which is 4x4s, or you brought it to us. So we're doing a formal review with each employee every quarter of the year. We only really talk about salary in one of those, but it's a systemized and a process that we go through, that every employee goes through. And my personal opinion is that annual might have been okay before, before COVID, but post COVID, we work a lot better when we force folks to sit down at systematically on a quarterly basis. That's not even to mention, the weekly meetings that people might have, but from an HR perspective, we have a process that calls for 4x4. So those are a few things that you brought to us that have helped us.
Should we explain what the 4x4 is? Like, just
Sure.
in a sentence or two? Do you want to,
Sure.
or do you want me to?
Go ahead. No, you're the inventor. For us anyways. I don't know. I'm not saying you invented it for the world.
So the approach behind the 4x4, and I know we've had extensive conversations about this, was to make wrapping your arms around the review process not to feel so scary and so daunting for the employee or the manager. Because I'm sure, as you've experienced, writing an annual review for 2, 3, 5 direct reports is a very time-consuming and exhausting process. It's very necessary, but now we do 4 questions 4 times a year, and all 4 of those questions are answered by the employee and their manager, and then they're having real conversations about those questions. Some of the questions are driven, or not some of, one of the questions is driven by how they display company values, which helps to enhance the culture and deliver on service for clients. And then others are about their goals and professional development and what they want to continue working on. So it's really, and what they're proud of achieving. So it's really a great opportunity to have that integrated conversation. And also, if somebody's starting to veer off track, instead of telling them, oh, at the end of the year, oh, you didn't do well this year, you're not getting a raise, you're not getting this, we're able to steer them back on track. So at the end of the year, when it comes time for that final review and that compensation adjustment, we can talk about the success that they've had and the progress that they've made.
Yeah, we're good enough now that hopefully that would never happen at the end of the year, even if we didn't do 4x4s. But understand your point. You did make a point on the 4x4s about mapping our core values. And I want to be real specific about what you mean by that. So we take our core values and we ask the manager and the employee to talk about, hey, which core value they exemplified in the last quarter. So at the very least, they're at 4 times a year, they're looking at all of our core values. So at the very least, they're getting to know our core values. So it's helpful in that way. That's a minimal helpfulness, but it's still very helpful. So Shannon, this has been great. Thanks so much. We went a little bit longer, but it was a great conversation. We will, of course, put Shannon's contact information at GritHR if she can help anybody with HR. And of course, we're here to help with outsourced IT. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Gar.